Wisconsin Eye is at the Madison Police Training Center. We're talking to Captain Vic Wall. We're talking about one of the latest pieces of equipment that Madison Police have. The shorthand is MRAP, Mine-Resistant Ambush Protected Vehicle. Did I come close, Captain?
That's the military term for it,
military
yes.
term.
Yes.
Well, this is a rather impressive piece of equipment. Can we start with how did Madison get this? Now, this commissioned for the military in Afghanistan, but now as we withdraw from Afghanistan, they're being made available to police agencies, sir?
Correct. Yeah, a few years ago, I recognized the need for an armored vehicle for the police department. So we've been pursuing that through a couple different avenues. One is a long-term budget process to purchase a civilian-designed armored vehicle. And then the second is a vehicle from the military through what's called the 1033 program. So for a few years we were on a waiting list, a national waiting list with other agencies for these vehicles. And up until recently there were very few of them coming out into the system available. And it's really after the Iraq and Afghanistan conflicts have wound down and these vehicles are not used anymore that they've been coming out from the military through the 1033 program to local law enforcement.
Now, prior to this, did Madison not have an armored vehicle? You're also commander of the SWAT unit.
The SWAT team, yes, that's correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Did Madison not have an armored vehicle, sir?
We have not. This is the first one that the Madison Police Department's ever had, and we've really been an outlier nationally for cities our size and not having one.
Okay. So municipalities put their name on a list, and do they ever, is there a priority? In other words, how long did you have to wait before you were notified that you were getting this unit?
We were on the list for probably about 2 years. It's a national list, and they do prioritize cities. I'm not exactly sure how they prioritize and how they establish that, but it took us about 2 years of waiting.
What's the advantage as a SWAT team commander? Why do you want a vehicle like this, sir?
Well, when our team comes out, it's because there's a situation that we believe involves people who are armed with firearms. And depending on the environment we're operating in or what the circumstances are, we need to do everything we can to protect our officers and in some situations to allow ourselves to protect citizens. And having a vehicle that provides that armor protection allows us to do that. It's really a best practice nationally for police departments in how they operate in tactical environments.
Now, what's the weight of this vehicle?
It's about 40,000 pounds. It's very heavy.
And the department took possession of it when?
Last fall, September, we actually received it, and then it took a few months to get it ready for street operational use with the paint and decals and radios and that sort of thing. So it became operational this spring.
Did the city have to pay anything for it?
The vehicle there was no charge for that. It actually is still titled to the Department of Defense, so we don't technically own it. We have the use of it. If we're done with it, we can't just sell it or auction it. We have to give it back to them or transfer it to another law enforcement agency. But there was no cost for it. We just had to get it and then obviously outfit it.
It's a very impressive vehicle. What's been the community response? Was there any, Madison has been called politically correct. Was there any debate over whether the police agency should get such a impressive military vehicle, Captain?
Well, a couple things. We have, as I mentioned, our initial sort of strategy, which is still in place, is to get a civilian vehicle. And actually going back 2 years or so through our budget process, our long-term capital budget for the Madison Police Department has included funding for an armored vehicle. So that money and that support has gone through the budget process and is out there in all the budget documents looking forward a few years. And we also had a council resolution through the City Council authorizing us to accept property through the 1033 program. Once we received it, there's certainly been some questions, a few people asking questions about it and some sort of criticism, but generally when we've had it out, it's been pretty popular. People are pretty interested in it. We take it to some community events. We've taken it to a number of places where people have been very interested in it, and it gives us an opportunity to explain why we use it and why we have it.
The debate over militarizing police departments, how do you feel about that? There are people who say we have a war on drugs, we have a war on terror, officers are more invading than partners in the community. Your position?
Well, I think it's a perfectly valid discussion to have about between a community and its police department. Unfortunately, I think people are asking the wrong questions and looking at the wrong issues. You should be asking yourself, what are your department's core values? How do you treat your citizens? How do you resolve conflict? How do you resolve use of force incidents? Who do you hire? How do you train them? The big picture, the things that are important, not what do you drive or what do you wear. I can tell you that, us having this vehicle isn't going to change our philosophy. It isn't going to change the way we treat citizens or treat the public. It's not going to change our, how we do business. It's just going to enable us to do that more safely. So I certainly agree that, there's different police departments have different philosophies on that sort of thing, and I think it's a valid discussion to have about how the interaction between the community and the police. I just think the use or lack or presence of an armored vehicle or any other particular tool or instrument is real peripheral to that discussion.
So this is one more tool for the Madison Police Department.
Yes, that's it.
So tell us about this vehicle's experience. Has it been out a number of times, sir?
Yeah, we've had it out about a half dozen times or so on incidents, and then we've also had it out at some sort of community events, so people have an opportunity to see it.
What type of event might trigger the use of this, and how, would it have much longer response times than officers in squad cars, sir?
Yeah, it is going to be a little slower response just because obviously we're not going to drive this thing around and patrol the streets, and in this thing we're limited in the number of drivers we have. It takes a little getting used to because of the size and the nature of the vehicle. So we have a smaller pool, so it isn't going to be an immediate response vehicle like a patrol car would be. We would bring it out on tactical incidents where we believe someone is posing a threat to officers or the public with a firearm. Just this week we had it out while we were looking for a homicide suspect, for example. And so it just allows us to protect our officers when they're doing that sort of high-risk activity.
So is this kind of a mobile command post? Would you ever use it to push vehicles out of the way or go into a building, sir?
Well, I think it would be part of that plan. We're not going to be, knocking down a building with this thing, and I think it'd be a pretty rare situation where we're intentionally going to make contact with another vehicle. It would have to be in a real extraordinary situation. Okay. But it just gives us a lot more alternatives and abilities to do things safely.
Okay. Well, talk to us about the different parts of it. Now, because it was designed by the military, this is steel that's designed to withstand small arms, correct, sir?
Yes.
Okay, and then you have some ability to bulldoze on the front end if needed, I assume?
Well, yes, it's not,
it wasn't designed for that.
It's not something that we are intentionally going to use it for in all likelihood, but certainly it's got a lot of weight and mass behind it, and if it needs to move something, it could in a pinch.
And what about for want of a better term, my term, turret? How is that used, sir?
Well, as an example, if we were going to use this vehicle as moving cover in front of a residence, for example, that maybe had a barricaded person in it, or we were doing a search warrant or some other sort of tactical operation and we're going to pull the vehicle in front, the turret would be an opportunity for officers to sort of perch themselves, still be surrounded by armor, but provide coverage to other team members or other officers, or a vantage point into a residence or dwelling or other building.
Okay. Did when you convert from military use, was this in Afghanistan or Iraq?
It was overseas. I'm not sure which country it was in. It was definitely overseas. We had a lot of sand in it that we needed to blow out of it when we got it back, and so it had been used, yes. Did
you have any conversion that you had to, when you're going from military use to domestic use, the City of Madison Police Department, any major conversions to the vehicle, to the MRAP?
There were a few things we had to do. It runs in a 24-volt system, so we had to, so our city fleet service and the radio shop did a fantastic job of converting all that to 12-volt to run all of our radios and emergency equipment that we use.
This is a very impressive vehicle, so let me ask a naive, stupid question. Would an offender or someone that you're trying to capture, would they be likely intimidated, and would this potentially cause any change in their behavior once you see this was on the scene?
You know, it's hard to say and hard to generalize. I think certainly it allows us to be in positions that are more advantageous to prevent, say, the possibility for escape or someone to take sort of some aggressive action towards us. And clearly when we use it on a call and it's all lit up and in use, you know, it's pretty obvious the police are there.
Okay, so how many, you have one driver, or a driver and a co-driver? How's that work?
Yeah, we always have a spotter go with the driver just because it's such a large vehicle and it doesn't have great visibility. So just to allow for another set of eyes while we're driving, and then if we have to do any backing maneuvers, we always use a spotter as well.
How's the mileage?
It's not good.
How is it rated?
It's got a 55-gallon gas tank, and
does it run on diesel?
It does run on diesel.
Okay.
Yep. I'm not sure exactly what mileage we got driving back from the base when we picked it up, but it's in the single digits.
Okay. Well, it's been around the community for a number of months. Have you received any serious pushback or concern about it?
You know, to be honest, I wouldn't say we've received any serious pushback. Certainly some people have asked some of the questions like you have about militarization, or is this, you know, in harmony with our philosophy on community policing. But really nobody has been able to specifically provide a criticism of using an armored vehicle in police operations. And I've yet to hear something like that. And like I said, generally people are very interested in it, and I think people recognize it's just another tool for us.
The national debate that says that increasingly law enforcement agencies need vehicles like this because the bad guys are better armed. Is there anything to that, sir?
Well, I think clearly you don't have to spend much time searching the news on Google or the internet to see that there's a lot of violence in our culture, a lot of firearms, a lot of weapons, and things that pose a risk to our officers. And so we have to make sure that we do our due diligence in providing adequate protection for them. And I think this is one piece of it. You know, the analogy I've used before is the soft body armor that an officer wears. They put their soft body armor on every day, and fortunately most officers will go through their entire career and never get shot. But I think that doesn't mean it's a waste of time or wasn't needed. That's a critical piece of safety for them, and this is just an extension of that.
So what special training did some of your SWAT team members have to undergo to operate this and work from it?
We brought in initially a guy from the military who had a lot of experience with these vehicles on the military side to provide some operator training to our folks, and also to provide some technical support in terms of making the transition to a civilian operational use. And then we've taken that and formed it into a training regimen of our own that we'll use for new drivers. And it's mainly just getting used to the size of the vehicle, the operation, the function, because it's very dissimilar from standard passenger vehicles that we're all used to driving.
Did you have to develop new protocols for it?
Yeah, we have an SOP document, a standard procedure that we have in place to talk about when it's appropriate to use, who can drive it, and then just some sort of nuts and bolts on safety and maintenance.
Okay. Well, Captain Wall, do I understand you're going to let us come in and tape from the inside here?
Sure, we can go inside, we can take a look, and then
if we
want to take her out for a spin, we can do that as well.
Oh, thank you, sir. Let's try that. So, Captain, this is the interior of the MRAP. Is 6 the number of officers that would operate from it?
Typically, we probably would squeeze in a few more than that for a typical operation that we'd be on. When we received it, it actually had seating for 4, and it's not designed for the kind of function that we use it for. It's designed for a small group of soldiers to button up in here and go a long distance in safety. Right. And so, when we would be using it, we'd have a lot more in and out and more people, so that's why we're trying to adapt it to make it as functional as possible for us. So we've increased the seating here and done a few other things to try to maximize the use of it.
But this vehicle, it doesn't have any weapons other than weapons carried by the officers, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then, so you would go up on the turret just to kind of watch a situation?
If we're in a stationary position, yeah, we're not going to ride in the turret while we're moving, but in terms of once you're in a stationary position, depending on the operation, you might have someone up in the turret to provide cover to officers.
Okay, so then once you call out a SWAT incident then and make a decision to use the vehicle, then officers would mass and then go to the scene in this vehicle?
We typically would have a staging point somewhere near the incident, and then we would just have 2 officers get this vehicle and bring it there.
Would this become the command post for that incident?
No, actually, the command post would be somewhere close but off-site, where the command structure of the team and the district involved would be, and this would just be operators on the team doing various tactical assignments.
You've talked to your officers who've been in the vehicle. Do they feel pretty secure and safe in this?
Oh, I think so. I think it allows a good sense of peace of mind in terms of providing this protection when they're out in harm's way.
How many licensed drivers, or how many people are authorized to drive it?
We're probably at about 25 to 30-ish at this point.
It's a 24/7 operation, obviously.
Yeah, we want to maximize the coverage, but that being said, like we want to make sure that people who are going to be driving it are able to do it with some regularity, just because it's so different than driving a squad car. Now,
long range, do you hope the police department goes to a smaller armored vehicle, or can you see the agency using this for a number of years, sir?
Well, my hope, I think, would be to transition to the civilian version, the Bearcat, like I spoke about. It's smaller, it's more suited to what we use it for, it's easier to maintain, and it's still in the long-term budget, and hopefully that's the direction we'll go. But absent that, this is very functional for us.
This was designed for IEDs and ambushes. Are those relevant to a city department like Madison, sir?
Mines and IEDs and that sort of thing, I think are probably completely irrelevant to us. This is just a function of a need for a vehicle that provides protection against firearms, and having an opportunity to get one from the military that happened to design them for a slightly different function.
Okay. Well, can we take it for a little spin?
Sure. I think we can.
Maximum speed? Can it keep up on a highway?
Absolutely. When our guys drove it back from the base, they had it at highway speed. They drove it back from Indiana, so it's.
And how many times did they fill up?
I think they got it topped off when they left at 55 gallons, and I think they only had to fill up once. So
I see. Okay.
That's still a lot of gas.
Does this have high maintenance costs, do you think, for city taxpayers, even though they didn't have to pay anything for it outright?
Well, I think some of the maintenance stuff is on our end. The military, the sort of standard procedures they have suggest that you drive it every 2 days, I think, every 2 to 3 days.
Operate it.
And so we've set up a calendar to drive it a couple times a week, just to keep everything moving in terms of the mechanicals and the batteries and all that sort of thing. So that adds a little complexity for us. Certainly it's added some complexity for our fleet services folks, our mechanics, because it's, they've done a great job of getting it up and running for us, but there's some, unique challenges dealing with a military vehicle in terms of finding parts and that sort of stuff.
Do you bring it to neighborhood festivals? If so, what's the most common question that you're asked?
Well, we haven't done that yet. I think people are just, they're intrigued by how large it is. I think if you just look at a picture of this, it doesn't do justice compared to when you're standing next to it. That's and right. Then I think they really want to know how much it weighs. That seems to be a very common
40,000 pounds.
About 40,000 pounds. Yeah.
Well, let's go for a little spin, sir.
All right.
That's okay. Thank you. So, does it feel like you're driving a 40,000 pound vehicle, Captain?
It certainly does. It is definitely.
Why? Why? Just so heavy, or?
It's heavy. It's vibrating. You're up higher than you would be on obviously in a passenger vehicle, and so it's definitely a different experience.
Well, there's a lot going on when you go to an emergency situation. I mean, you have to assess the latest developments. You have to be in contact with a command post. So, are you giving instructions to the officers in the back, or things to potentially anticipate when you arrive?
Typically, we're going to do that, but we're hoping that you know, the spotter or the team leader in the back will be able to handle a lot of those coordination issues, and then the driver is really going to focus on the driving as much as possible.
Okay, so if we were responding to an emergency, then you'd have all the lights going and you'd be going as fast as you can safely go, correct?
Yes, although we're very clear that we're going to be real, we're going to have a lot of discretion about when we're going to drive this in an emergency mode, just because it's so loud or heavy and large. The emergency lights are really typically more for visibility if we have to park it on a tactical incident or keep it up front of a location. It's certainly not designed for pursuits or any sort of fast driving.
Yes.
So we're not going to do a lot of traffic stops in it.
So if you were writing a Consumer Reports review of this, your two-sentence review would say?
Well, for being as large as it is and as heavy as it is, it's pretty good. It drives pretty nice. It's once the climate control is on, it's actually quite comfortable in here. And to do all that and still, you know, be as functional as it is, I think is pretty impressive.
What about the transmission? It's automatic butt, you said. So what's the butt part?
Well, it just it functions with sort of a push button rather than any sort of shifter like a more traditional vehicle would use.
Okay.
And that's right down here.
Okay. So that's the actual gear shift.
Yes.
Okay. And traditional turn signals and everything?
Yep. Signals, everything else is pretty traditional from a standard truck, you know, like a dump truck or some other.
Are there a lot of computers on board? To your knowledge?
No, I don't think there are. I think it's pretty no frills in terms of mechanicals. You know, we've added our radios and emergency gear for the lighting, but in terms of the operation of it, it's pretty basic.
I see a traditional speedometer, fuel, volts, battery, stuff like that, but why is this grade gradient important, sir?
Well, because the way the vehicle is designed, it's very top heavy. So depending on the road or the environment you're operating in, if you get too much tilt, the vehicle could tip over. So this is something the military put in.
Oh, I see.
To give them a gauge of what sort of incline or what sort of angle the vehicle is at. You know, I think on paved roads it's probably not too much of an issue, but on the different sort of terrain that they would operate at, it might be.
So have you heard the horsepower? How big an engine?
Oh, the engine is pretty big. It's a 9.7 liter, I think, 8.7. It's large. Takes 27 quarts of oil. I mean, it's big.
Wow. And you say it's recommended that you start it every 2 or 3 days just to keep it active?
Yeah, that's what the military sort of routine maintenance program recommends is regularly driving it, and so we have a system set up for that.
I bet everybody at this intersection is following all the traffic rules, looking at this vehicle.
Probably true.
Have you ever had any drivers that kind of just stop maybe in the middle of the road and say, what the heck is that?
Well, when we've driven it, particularly when we first acquired it, just driving it to the garage, it gets a lot of attention. You can just see people pay a lot of, it gets people's attention and they notice it.
I hope it hasn't caused an accident though, right? Just
Not that I'm aware of, no, I don't think so.
Gawkers.
We'll keep it that way, hopefully.
Keep it that way.
Yeah.
Okay, so it drives easier than it might appear. A vehicle of this size and heft and everything.
Yeah, and I think for someone who was used to driving large vehicles like a dump truck or other commercial vehicles, it'd be pretty basic. It'd be pretty comfortable for them.
Well, this is a comfortable seat. I mean, maybe I don't want to drive to Pennsylvania in it, but
yeah, probably not.
And go around through the city.
Yeah, it gets the job done.
Really appreciate it. So this, doing shows like this is kind of your belief that you want to explain this unit and how it's used as one more tool of the department, right, sir?
Yeah, I think it's important for people to be asking the right questions and looking at the right issues when they're talking about police and how they interact with the community and how they do their business. And I think the armored vehicles have, really, they just really detracted and people have focused on them without, in my mind, looking at what the more pertinent issues are.
Okay. Well, Captain Vic Wall, thanks for hosting Wisconsin Eye and the Spin and talking about this very interesting, novel, but effective new tool for the Madison Police Department.
Well, thank you.
Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.